What's up, guys? It's NS vs. the World with my first video of 2025. This will be my top 25. So, to keep this intro as short as possible, I'll mention 3 coasters, all B&Ms, that did not make the top 25. They are Talon, Iron Menace, and Great Bear. Great Bear and Iron Menace are mid, and Talon was decent but didn't make the cut. Anyways, let's get started. Coming in at the number 25 spot is Sandy's Blasting Bronco. This is a pretty decent ride. It has a forward and backward launch and a couple nice hang time filled inversions. But the thing is, to me, the rattle really holds it back. It's more of a vibration, but you really feel it in the first 2 valleys and it hurts. Other than that, though, the ride is pretty solid, so it makes my top 25. Coming in at number 24 is Medusa Great Adventure. I like floorless coasters mostly more than inverts, and this is a solid one. You have a ton of floaty inversions, so it's pretty fun. And the lift into the mid-course, in the back row, you have a bit of lift. You can feel it, and I didn't really expect it, but the ride is pretty quality. I like the 0G roll. Everything's floaty, and it's overall just a decent, fun ride. Wish the mid-course didn't trim as much, though. Number 23 is Batman the Ride at Six Flags Great Adventure. This is a very intense coaster, and is my favorite B&M invert. I've only been on 3, so it's not topped by Great Bear Talon, like I mentioned before. It's just such an intense ride from start to finish. The whole thing is a gray out. It makes my legs go numb. Very intense ride. Every single inversion hits. It's either whippy or just stupid intense. All those turns also just mind-numbingly intense. That's why it's so great. Number 22 is Green Lantern, now defunct, at Great Adventure. A lot of people hated on this ride, but I found a way to ride it where I wouldn't get any head banging or leg pain. There was a bit of leg pain, but it was much less than my other previous rides. And it has a great mix of forces. It is stupid intense, and you do get a couple moments of lift, which on a stand-up coaster feels pretty weird. This ride was really underrated. A lot of people said it was one of the worst coasters, but since I'm decently tall enough to get over the restraints, I get no head banging, and I'm in a perfect position to not get any groin pain or leg pain. Just stand straight up, honestly, but it doesn't matter now because the ride's gone. But anyway, a lot of people hated on it. In my opinion, it was a great B&M with a great mix of forces. Number 21 is Bobcat at the Great Escape. This is overall just a quality Gravity Group family Woody. The restraints on this do not move after they're locked, so you have a bunch of freedom if you get room in the station. And you get a bunch of good floater, and it's very smooth because it's brand new. And I don't have any other Gravity Group Woodies to compare it to because the only other one I've ridden, I have no memory of my ride experiences. But from what I've heard, it's weaker airtime compared to others. But that doesn't mean it's a bad ride. You get a bunch of good floater, and it's very smooth, and it's brand new. So it's very good, Number 20 is Hydra at Dorney Park. As I said before, I love floorlesses, and this is no different. It's an amazing floorless, in my opinion. I'm not sure if I'll ever ride a better one than this because it's really good. It has a great mix of forces. You have a hang time filled roll coming right out of the station. No lift, anything. You get a nice straight drop and another drop later in the ride with some floater. And you have whippy, not really intense, but just decently whippy inversions. And that just makes it a quality floorless. That's why it ranks so high. At number 19, we have Possessed at Dorney Park. Now, it might seem weird that I've possessed over a bunch of other Dorney coasters like Menace, Talon, and Hydra. But the thing is that it's so much fun. You get a nice couple launches, and all the float on the front and back spikes is really good. The front row is the best row on this ride, I've heard. I wouldn't even know because I haven't done the back. I only did the front 5 times. But yeah, you go high up, you get a bunch of float, and you get some nice back and forth launches. So overall, just a good ride that might seem high, but in my opinion, it's underrated. Number 18 is Great White at Maurice Piers. This is just a fun CCI Woody. When I rode, it wasn't in optimal conditions. It just opened, hadn't tested in hours, and it was on fully empty trains, except for me, obviously. I didn't get a lot of airtime, but it was just such a fun ride that it doesn't even matter. Got a bunch of float in general. It wasn't airtime, but you could feel a bit of lift. And the laterals were great. So even though I didn't get crazy forces, it was just such a fun ride that it didn't even matter. So that's why it ranks so high. Number 17 is Casino at Hydrosphere. What did I just say? Okay, so Hydrus is a really short ride. I understand that, but the thing is, every element packs in a punch. You have your drop, loop, roll, like little hill into the brakes. Everything gives great forces. So it's not that hard for it to get this high when every single element hits and it's extremely smooth and re-rideable. And the setting is amazing. So it gets so high because even though it's short, it really makes the most of what it has. That drop is insane, by the way. Coming in at the Sweet 16 is Jersey Devil at Great Adventure. Now, I need some re-rides on this thing because every ride I've gotten has been ruined in some way or another. My first rides of 2023 were ruined by potholes, and in 2024, the one ride I got on it, I got a terrible cramp in my leg and it ruined the whole ride. But anyways, other than that, it's a great ride. You know, the drop is amazing. You get a bunch of airtime and hang time. And overall, it's just a quality experience that would be much better if the restraints were better. Other than that, though, it's still amazing. Number 15 is Fahrenheit at Hershey Park. This is a solid Intamin, which I honestly don't even know what the model is. It's just so random. But as a nice drop, you get a bunch of inversions on this ride, which mostly vary, except for the Cobra Roll, just doing nothing whatsoever. Get some whippy corkscrews, and it throws in a couple pops of ejector. And it's not like average ejector, it's strong ejector. Like it's Intamin hyper ejector. So yeah, overall, just a quality ride experience with a great mix of forces. And by the way, it is stupid intense. Like I gray out heavy on this ride. But yeah, it is not better than the other Intamin at this park, Storm Runner. This is an Intamin accelerator with one of the best launches I've experienced. It is very powerful, but it's not as powerful as another hydraulic launch that will be featured later on this list. Doesn't mean it's bad though. An amazing launch into an equally amazing top hat. After that, you do have a bit of a weak inversion, but you have one of the best inversions in the world with the flying snake dive. It is crazy whippy, and it has a bit of hang time mixed in too. Overall, even though Fahrenheit is a bit longer, this ride is more pure thrill and honestly gives me more adrenaline, which is why it ranks higher. Storm Runner was number 14, by the way, and number 13 is TMNT Shellraiser at Nickelodeon Universe. This ride is rough, but that does not make it a bad ride. Shellraiser has an amazing layout. This is one of the best layouts I've experienced. You have hang time, you have whip, you have airtime, you have great inversions, you have ejector on the drop. It is just a great variety that it would be much higher if it wasn't held back by its roughness. Just an amazing mix of forces that, even though it's very rough, you can appreciate the forces. Number 12 is Candymonium, going back to Hershey Park. This is the lowest hypercoaster on this list because it is a little short and the trims hurt the ride. Even though, obviously, I'm not talking good about it right now, that does not mean it's a bad ride whatsoever. It is a very re-rideable and fun coaster with a bunch of floaters scattered throughout the layout. I mean, you have the 5-second hill, the speed hill, the weird sideways hill. You have your good elements, also including the drop. But the thing is, the trims on that bigger Camelback, not the 5-second one, but the second hill, and the smaller hill towards the end, the trims really hurt the airtime and the speed of the ride, which is why it's the lower ranked hyper. Number 11 is the now sadly defunct Kingda Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure. It is absolutely devastating that this ride had to close forever, and I missed out on my last rides on it because of a football game I had to play. But this ride is amazing. Like I mentioned earlier about the hydraulic launch, this is the best launch I've ever experienced. It was really one of a kind, going over the top hat. Every part of this ride, honestly, was just one of a kind, and it doesn't make my top 10 because it's a little bit short, but this was an absolute legend. Rest in peace. Entering our top 10, we are starting off with Comet at the Great Escape. This is one of the best wooden roller coasters I've ever done. There's only a couple above it, and it is an extremely long ride. It is filled with floater and filled with laterals on every turn. Even the lift hill goes super fast. Like, you start to speed up at the top, as you can see in the footage right here. And it is crazy going down that drop. Even though you don't get airtime, it's just so fast. And it's just such a great ride. Shout out to my dog barking. But there's so much airtime all over the place. It's so re-rideable. I just love this coaster. Number 9 is a mildly similar Phoenix at Knoebels. The main difference between this and Comet is that the restraints are buzz bars with no seatbelt. So you get crazier airtime, than Comet, and it is insane the airtime you get on Phoenix. You are flying out of your seat. It really doesn't feel like ejector, but you just get lifted so high out of your seat that it's still, by most people, considered ejector. Overall, just such a crazy wooden roller coaster. I need more rides on this because this is my least remembered top 10 coaster. At number 8, we have Gale Force at Playland's Castaway Cove. This ride may seem crazy high for a small ride, but this packs the craziest punch on any coaster, honestly, in my opinion, besides King to Ka's launch. It has a nice swing launch, which, isn't really special compared to the rest of the ride, but it's good. You have a batshit crazy top hat and all these random twisty elements that are just filled with ejector and laterals. It's insane. It's so intense and crazy, and it goes through twice. Number 7 is Steel Force at Dorney Park. This Morgan hyper is considered by many to be an extremely weak hyper, with some even putting Talon at the same park above this ride, which I find to be absolute insanity. It is filled to the brim with straight floater airtime. Every moment in the front row has floater. It's crazy how sustained it is too. And the one part of the ride that really doesn't feature airtime is a stupid intense and super long helix. Overall, just a barrage of great airtime and a bit of intensity. And that's why it gets so high. A lot of people think it's mid, but it's amazing. Number 6 is Nitro at Great Adventure. This ride is one of the best coasters, just straight up, I've ever done. A lot of people think this is a weak hyper. This is not a weak hyper. And I used to have it over some crazy rides that I will mention later on in this list. I'll mention them being under Nitro in the past for me. But I've kind of come to my senses a bit, even though this ride is filled with floater airtime and it has the most intense moment I've experienced on a coaster with the Helix. Even though it's not the most intense coaster, it has one of the most intense moments. But overall, this ride has floater all over the place. It's so re-rideable, and it was once my favorite coaster at Great Adventure. Just such a great floater-filled hyper. We are entering the grand finale, the top 5, with Skyrush at Hershey Park. This Intamin hyper is one of the most insane coasters of all time. The ejector is everywhere. That drop is the craziest first drop on a coaster, in my opinion. There's so much ejector all over the place. There's intensity on low to the ground turns, and you used to get insane, toss you around, car crash laterals, but in my opinion, the new restraints hurt those laterals. But overall, insane ejector, crazy laterals all over the place. Would be top 3 if it was a bit longer, and also if I had the old restraints, by the way. Number 4 is Superman the Ride, my personal all-time favorite coaster at Six Flags New England. This ride, man, how good it would be if it had T-bars. I still think about that to this day. But anyways, the ride is an amazing experience. You have one of the best layouts of all time. You have a first half filled with floater and ejector airtime with that crazy El Toro level 4th hill. And then in the second half, you have intense helixes mixed in with airtime pops. Such a long ride too, and it does not lose its speed. It has crazy pacing all the way through, which is why it is one of the best coasters of all time. My number 3 is El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure. I will never forget being 12 years old and visiting Great Adventure for the first time and walking up to this coaster with my dad and getting on a complete walk-on, walking straight to the back row and experiencing El Toro for the first time. It was amazing. This ride will forever be a legend to me. Just the nostalgia I'll have for it after that amazing moment of my life. I wish I could experience it again for the first time, but you know what? That first time was amazing for memory, so that's all I need. But anyways, about the experience, you have some of the world's best ejector airtime. It's all over the place on this ride. And this thing is just so aggressive. It's all bite, all bark. It's all of both. Just so aggressive and has amazing ejector. And it's just one of the best coasters in the world. We only have 2 coasters left on this list. And number 2 is Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England. I didn't even really talk too much about how important Superman the Ride was into making me an enthusiast as a Six Flags New England home parker. But this and Superman are really what made me an enthusiast. Wicked Cyclone is one of the best coasters I've ever done. It is so powerful. You don't have crazy standout elements, but every single element just hits. You have outer banks, crazy, toss, Skyrush level laterals, on one element. And you have nice floaty inversions and a ton of nice ejector moments. That drop is insane, by the way. and overall, Wicked Cyclone is just such a quality ride that even though it doesn't really stand out for anything, it does everything so well that it's just an amazing ride, and it helped make me an enthusiast and make me who I am today. And the best coaster of 2024, in my opinion, is Wildcats Revenge at Hershey Park. This ride it's just something else. I mean, like, it has a big difference in ranking from Wicked Cyclone. Nothing comes close to this ride, in my opinion. I used to have Wicked Cyclone over it, but my opinion has definitely changed. This ride has just such an amazing mix of elements. Honestly, the sequencing barely even makes sense, but it's just such a high quality ride, and it has so much power. I mean, the ride is just so extremely aggressive, dude. Like, there's laterals that, like, I genuinely think the ride would be better off without. That's how extreme it is. But yeah, aggressive ejector, like some of the best inversions on any coaster. Overall, just such a crazy experience, with the finale very much matching the rest of the ride because it has insane ejector and painful laterals. Anyway, that is going to do it for my top 25 of 2024. I didn't get on a lot of crazy new coasters in 2024. The only new parks I visited were Great Escape, Casino Pier, and Dorney. But for 2025, I have a lot of plans, so this top 25 will change a lot next year. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. 2024 was quite a year in good and bad ways, but we're going to try to make 2025 even better.